So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming for this webinar. Uh, One of the things which is happening across the industry these days is that everybody wants to focus towards the outcome. And that has been a kind of management mandate that instead of focusing towards output, we should start focusing towards outcomes. But then the $1 million questions comes like how to do that actually. So even though certain matrices are defined from the business standpoint, but then how they're converted from the business to software development as well. So that's where some of the techniques comes to picture, and one of the technique is impact mapping, which has been getting popularized by Goico for quite some time. I think that basically helps in defining a realistic roadmap, because generally we think about a roadmap something like which is a kind of a tunnel actually. So you have something which is going from A to B, but then roadmap is not something like that. It is more like a Google map, in which you may be having multiple roads going to a destination actually, and you want to choose one of them depending on whether they are reaching towards outcome or not. So so that is that is one of the things which will be focused as part of the impact mapping. So without further ado, I would like to invite Ashok to talk about impact mapping.
Thank you, Shrikant, as always. So one of the key things that he talks about is we are moving from output to outcome, and that outcome is basically impact. So when you're doing this impact mapping, this exercise, so it's basically you're trying to bring outcome first. And when I'm talking about this, as usual, I'm going to talk a lot from my experience, and I'll give you some very, the real practical tips on how to do that versus, because there are tons of articles on the internet and everywhere that you will see. But what is the principles behind it? What are the hidden things behind it? How to do it right? What are the things we should watch for? What actually is trying to achieve? I'm going to talk about some of them, definitely. If I don't, then prompt me, and then I'll tell you like why are we doing that, why we're doing that way. What is the idea? What is the motive behind it? So first of all, I've seen, and I've done this research myself. Every company, every team I go to, I try to find out about the backlog. How is the backlog? I've yet to find a team which has a good backlog consistently. And when I say good, means good by all means. It is not like they're full of technical stories, or they just have no stories, or all kinds of junks, or for that matter, the stories would be keep changing all the time, in the sense like every time they say like, hey, this technical changes happen, then they're going to go and make changes in the story. There is no business orientation. The stories are rarely written in a business, from the business perspective. And the most importantly, nobody understands the story, right? And similar, I've seen in the safe world, when you go there, the features they write are very technical features. The acceptance criteria, that doesn't make sense, or whatever they have written, at least the people on the ground, the developers, they do not understand why ever this was written. What does it mean? So they spend virtually half the iteration understanding it, what it is all about, right? So this is entire, all the things I've seen, and this is not one team. I have there's a called Agile Health Radar, and I facilitated for over 100 teams. And this was one common theme, that our features are bad, our stories are bad, we do not understand, we spend a lot of time. So why that happens is because one critical piece, which is called meeting of the mind, is absolutely missing. And that is called discovery, and in lots of companies, and they do it, but like I said earlier, they do it as if it's a one big holistic exercise. It should not be done that way. The discovery happened once, and it's not set in stone. It's a living and breathing thing that keeps happening every iteration. If not every iteration, then at least every month. then what happens that you're always updated, there's always meeting of the minds, you're always mapping, and you're always, so we'll go through the exercise. At least it's 1 hour, you cannot create the whole map, but we'll go through that exercise. Let's go through that. And why it's happening is why team keep complaining all the time. One fundamental reason is because most of the places which you have seen, the stories or features are handed off. They are not the participants in that. And even if they are a participant, they do not do some kind of a exercise where their ideas come out, they understand, they invest themselves. So if the developers, the real person who is going to go and actually write those, turn those stories into a software, if they do not participate in that discovery process, then whatever you do, it's kind of incomplete, in my opinion. And that's exactly what is happening. So when I talk about the innovation won't happen. Why innovation won't happen is because the tech is like, hey, this is the order I got from the top, and all you have to do is just go deliver it. So that's not how the software world works. It's a knowledge work. Means you have to go and think through it. You have to come up with multiple solutions, different ways of doing it. And for that, it's very to understand the context and how to do that end to end. If you do not understand what is happening in and around that, you will end up writing something that may not be meaningful, or what I call overproducing. You will overproduce. So how we're going to go tackle it? So there are two things that I'm going to talk about is what should be how you can overcome this. So in a lot of companies, we talk about the discovery. Yeah, we have already done it. Don't worry about it. But they do not understand what they have done is not a true discovery. It's just a one-time inception and one-time thinking through creating all the features upfront at a go, maybe year back, 1 year back, 2 years back. That's not what it is. It is a continuous process, just like you do backlog grooming, just like you do sprint. Discovery is also a kind of a process or a kind of an event that should happen every iteration, if not every iteration, at least once in a month. Reason I'm saying is the month is the longest time you can have your scrum, your sprint. So that's the key thing. So that's why I'm saying allocate capacity every iteration, that this time, at least 2 hours or 1 hour, whatever that is, we are going to spend on discovery. And it's a time boxed event. So treat it like another event in your scrum, and it must happen, that discovery. If you do not do this discovery, guess what is going to happen? You will spend, just like backlog grooming. So somebody asked me, what's the difference between discovery and backlog grooming? As you go through the exercise, you will understand what's the difference. Discovery is even higher level, where you try to understand the overall roadmap, how we're going, where we're going, how it's impacting us. If you ever done the mind mapping exercise, where you think through the different scenarios, and this is not a solution. This is still discovery of the requirement, of the features, of the need of the customer. That is the right thing to say. And that's where this is so important, that you go and invest your time in the discovery and understand it very well. If you do not spend at least 1 hour or 2 hours, whatever is needed in a month, or at least in an iteration, you are going to spend a lot of time during the iteration trying to understand why ever it was written. So that's the huge difference. Some rules here to follow. First, no one can steal time. That you cannot say like, sorry, we don't have time in this iteration, so let's not do discovery. No, you have to do it. Means the PO or anybody cannot steal time and say like, sorry, we're not going to do it. This is required. This is one of the fundamental steps for understanding the intent of the customer, intent of the business, why they're doing it. And once you understand the intent, then it becomes very easier to go and break down those features into stories or epic into stories. If you do not understand the intent and you try to go and convert them into stories, it is like shooting in the dark. And that's what we keep doing all the time, right? In most of the teams. Spend some time in discovery almost every iteration. You must learn and learn. So one question people ask me all the time, why I talk about unlearning, not just learning. So we all say like learn it all, fail fast, learn fast. But I also say unlearn fast, because we have been working, except those people who have never worked in the waterfall or some other methodologies, which was not agile. A lot of us have a certain way of working. A lot of us look for, I mean, I've seen like in many companies, people are so much used to orders that if we ask them to go and organize themselves, they're like, how do we do that? We have never done that. We need this, we need that. So this is happening because they have developed a habit over a period of time. So this is not only about, take example, discovery. We never do discovery. We just go and take the stories and implement it and deliver it. There are a bunch of stories we commit in the sprint, or for that matter, in any iteration, and we just go and deliver it. So this is a bad habit that has developed over the period of time, and people think that's normal. That's not normal. So learning is important, and unlearning is also important. So all those habits that we have developed as a team, there should be a room to unlearn it. And for unlearning it, yeah, you need a little bit of courage. You have to be humble, and you have to have that integrity. So these are the things which I suggest all the time, because people hesitate in asking for it. They do not have the courage to ask for the right thing. And when they do not have the courage, they don't get the right thing. Okay, so I deliberately added this slide in. This is one of my practical tips. Like, how do you actually go and introduce it? You have to ask for it. Like, hey, in every iteration, we are going to go and have some time for the discovery, and we'll do some exercise, whether that's a causal loop, that's a mind mapping, that's an empathy mapping, that is a impact mapping, or some exercise we have to do so that we all are on the same page on the possible things that is going to come in next 2 or 3 iterations. Okay, so how do you identify backlog items and get them prioritized? So there are some rules which I talked about, and this is in the impact mapping workshop. This is one of the critical things that we do. We take the epic, we do impact mapping, and we turn that epic into stories. Or if you're in the safe world, you take the epic, you do impact mapping there and turn that into features, right? And then from features, again, you can do the same thing and convert them into stories. But that's primarily the purpose of how to write good stories or good features. And like I said, the purpose is to align the understanding as a team. So how you're going to go do stories and meet the definition of ready. So this is one of the things that is you must have seen. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm sure you must have seen like a lot of teams, they start working on the features or the stories without it being ready. And this is one area where if you do that impact mapping, at least you can help team bring that feature or that story into a ready state. If in backlog grooming, we also do the same thing, but backlog grooming is a lower level thing. It is like breaking that bigger story into the small stories and then, sizing it. It is a little higher level. You understand the intent. You try to create some high level solutions, not low level, and then convert that big epic into features, so at different levels. When every month, if not every iteration, duration at least 2 hours, or if you can finish in 1 hour, awesome. Who attends? Business engineers, POS me. So somebody asked me sometime earlier, like, do you want business to be engaged every iteration? The answer is yes. They must work together. There is no exception. You cannot just say like, hey, you're business, so you have an exception and you can only attend once in 2 months or 3 months. No, they all must be sitting together. Bringing engineers closer to the business, closer to the customers is the goal behind this workshop. So why I insist on that is because a lot of development team, rarely they talk to business, rarely they talk to customers. They must be in touch with the business and with the customers. And this is a very good tool to bring them together. If you bring them together here, the most likely you will see them together in lot other events. For example, you can sometimes see them together in grooming or refinement. You will see them together in review, and many other opportunities you will see them. Why you will see them together is because now you're understanding and clarifying the intent of the customer, why we're doing it, why cannot live without it. This is one question that very few development team ask, like why we cannot live without it. If you do not ask this question, that means whatever you're doing might not have been done. You never explored that. So everything that a team does, they must explore, can we live without it? And that ties back to that, the art of maximizing work not done. If we do not explore that, then we are not doing the right thing. And this is the area, this is the exact workshop where we talk about the impact, like what impact we are creating, why we are doing it, and how this is going to go and meet the customer need. Process, collaborate together on a whiteboard or virtual whiteboard, whatever that is. Output is business hypothesis, and we'll talk about that. What is that hypothesis? High-level solution, not necessarily in all cases, but in many cases, stories, and if possible, high-level estimate, right? So these are the things that should come out of that impact mapping exercise. Certain more important things about impact mapping. Impact mapping reorients us towards the delivery of value, not features. So like I've been saying earlier, outcome-oriented. So outcome-oriented is a nice word, but how do you become outcome-oriented? The best way to become outcome-oriented is to focus on the outcome. So impact is nothing but outcome. So if you focus on the outcome and you map the outcome first, then most likely you're going to go and stay confined to the outcome. And you're going to go and work on the most important high value outcome first. How? We will see that in that the impact map that I have created down below. The second is the impact map is it also communicates a scope, goals, and your priorities. Once you create that impact map, then you know that what is your priorities. Together as a team, you will decide. This is the first thing. So a fundamental difference between an outcome-oriented team and an output-oriented team is the outcome-oriented team always work with a hypothesis. Means they have a hypothesis, like if this is my goal, for example, if I have to increase customer satisfaction by 10%, if I have to add 1 million users, or if I have to increase the revenue by 5%, or if I have to increase the retention rate of the customer by a few percentage points, what are the stories that we can work off? So mostly you see that somebody in the business go and decide this for you and say like, go and work on this. And I have given that example earlier in my life that happened in my previous company. And they said like, if they route all the calls to great agents of the company, means the agents were considered top 10%. If you write all the high NPV calls, means all the valuable calls to those top 10% agents, the revenue will go up. So this is the hypothesis they created. So they wanted to convert that whole into a big software. And I asked them like, how do you know it's right? So that's where when they did this impact mapping exercise, they realized there are many other ways, but this is the one they think will going to go and actually hit them, means help them achieve the impact of increasing the revenue by 5%. So we started working on that. We did a very nice impact mapping and we created a skeleton. And finally, we validated that, well, it's not going to work. It's just that when we actually did the exercise with minimal amount of software, we realized there was hardly any difference between the revenue of those high NPV customers versus the rest. So we could do that because we were able to identify the hypothesis early by breaking it down to that one thing that we need to go and experiment first. Then we started experimenting on the other things. If we would not have done this impact mapping exercise, we would not have known what are the other alternatives of impacting that the revenue generation target that we have, and we would have just got that one thing from the business and go and implement it, only to realize after 8 months, well, it's not going to work. So when we know our alternatives, what are the things, we know our priorities, we'll start picking them one by one. And so there are two basic assumptions. The first is that the deliverable will support a change in behavior of an actor. So in this case, when I gave that example, we thought that if we route all the high NPV calls to the right agent, to the top 10% agent, it will lead to more conversions. So that's an assumption, right? And that we validated by actually working in an iteration or two iterations to see whether it will work or not. And the second is that once the impact is supported, means once we give them, deliver the software, the relevant actor, means in that case, those agents will contribute to the overall objective, means it will actually do the work. So these both are assumptions that we had. What we did, basically, we visualized those assumptions in nice mapping exercise and saw like, well, whether it's going to work or not going to work, we'll decide after we actually implement it, right? But this visualization is very important. And of course, this is not like this will happen. This is just an assumption. But creating that assumption, radiating it, sharing it with business, PO, engineers, architects, and everybody in your team, that is the key, so that everybody understands why you're doing it, right? And that's the idea behind this impact mapping. So what we do in impact mapping, the four things. First, we have to set a goal. What is the goal? Why we're doing it? That is the goal. And the goal is, in this case, like I gave an example, we have to increase the revenue. In my previous company, the example I gave, there was the goal was to increase the revenue by like 5% or something. In some other companies, it's going to be on $1 billion revenue, or reduce that or increase the retention rate, reduce the return rate. It could be anything. And if you do not have that goal, it's very hard. And the goal must be tangible, not like a fictitious goal, just improve the happiness. You cannot do that. You have to have a very tangible goal so that you can map that to the real things. The second part of, once you have the goal, the second part of that is actors. And the word may sound like the actors are human beings, but actors are not human beings. Actors could be even system. For example, if you create a department, or it could be anybody. So if you're creating a department, or you're having a department, you want them to work in a certain way. For example, in this case, if you want your marketing team to have a promotion, so marketing team here becomes an actor, and the impact they're going to create would be the promotion they're going to go into it, right? So similarly, you need to map like who are the actors. The actors are not always people. Actor can be anybody, a department, an agency, anything, who has the ability to create that impact. So what does impact mean? So this is a kind of a dicey word, impact. What would I should put it this way. What would actors like to do? That is the key thing. What actors, what are the things they're going to do to create so that they can impact the goal? They can change the goal, they can change the behavior, and that will help them achieve the goal. That's what the impact is. And how would our actors' behavior change? I mean, if I give them a deliverable, I'll give them something, some software, whatever, then how that will help actors achieve the goal, right? Something like that. And deliverable is basically what we can do as a team to support the required change. Means deliverable is not a story. The story comes after deliverable. But deliverable says like, okay, so if we do this thing, then for example, in my previous example, the deliverable was like, if we route all the calls to the right agent, then the revenue is going to increase. Then we are going to go and create stories based on that. Then the stories is going to be like what system changes we have to make, what are the things that we'll have to do, what other kind of changes we have to make to show that it's actually routed in a nice way to the good customers, how we're going to go and create those backlog of the items of high NPV calls, all those become a story underneath. But the deliverable is like how we will enable actors to go and create that impact, how that will enable change in the behavior. So that's the whole idea behind that. So now let's go straight into that that one impact map which I have created. And this is recently in Arizona. What happened is the government made the betting, sports betting legal. So they also gave like $200 to everyone to go and do the betting. So if say you're a sports betting company, and if your goal is to get at least 10,000 customers in the first month or 6 months, whatever the time frame, or it could be anything, 1 million customer I have to acquire in certain period of time. So how will you go and do it? In most of the companies, business is going to say like, hey, go do this promotion, do that, pretty standard thing, and they will just say like, do this, do that, and just hand it off to the developers, and the developers are going to go and work it, only to realize later like the development was delayed and what was delivered did not have the required outcome. We just created something, we just did something without understanding that how actually whatever we're doing is actually making an impact and helping us to reach that target of 10,000 customer iteration after iteration. Literally, you can see in a very small bouts, like how each iteration, or at least every month, or in a couple of iterations, maybe 3 iterations, whatever it is, depending on the size of the feature, how that is impacting your goal, your ultimate goal, which is 10,000 customers. If it is not adding, then pivot and start making journey in the right direction. So that's why it's very important that your impact mapping should have a very clear goal, tangible goal that you want to achieve, and then let's start the impact. So the next important thing here in the impact map, can you see that my impact map, or it's too small for you? Let me try to make it bigger. Yeah. So the next important thing that you will see are actors. Jesus. The actors. I can move it here below. Yeah. The actors. So like I said, the actors, and this is a very important part. The actors could be players, agencies, the marketing department of the company, or it could be anybody. So the question is, when you're doing the impact mapping, how far should you go? So keep in mind, the idea is to develop something and come out with something important. So when you start developing this kind of impact mapping, try to first have a goal and try to come out with all the possible alternatives. Because as much as possible that you can do not boil the ocean, but if you have a goal and if you want to make an impact on that goal, you need to know all the possible things that a business, architect, developers, POs, SMs, whoever is there in the team, how they can work together to come out with the best of the ideas. And this is not just the job of a business or any one person. It's a collective exercise to understand. And you'll also see when you do the exercise, both technology and business come together to come up with different options, the feasibility of the options, what is doable, what cannot be doable. So the ideas that you will generate in this workshop, in this collective exercise, will be much better than somebody sitting in the business and coming with a couple of ideas or 10 ideas. Because now your ideas will be vetted against, the other ideas, against technology options, against so many other things that we will talk about during this exercise. So take example, say your first actor is player. So basically what you're saying is like, we will go and enable or empower our players either to stick to this betting, the betting website, so that they can do the sports betting more and more, or we would like to go and ask them to become our agent so that they can start inviting more people, right? So that's one way of growing, like ask your customers to invite more customers, right? So that is one thing. Now the people say like, how are you going to do it? So what change in behavior you want to see in that player, how they will start inviting, what are the things you want them to do differently? So that would be, you want them to invite friends, okay? So that is one option. Second, personalization. So you will give them a space so that they can create like my events, my betting, my whatever, So once it gets personalized, then they tend to stick more. Plus, they will understand that what they need to do, and they can also become your advocate. The third is recommendation engine. Recommendation engine. You can start recommending. Like you can go and start betting on these sports or whatever that is. Recommendation engine, typically the way it works. The more you recommend based on your AI, machine learning and all, the chances the customer is sticking would be higher, and higher customer satisfaction, and they're leading to go and bringing more people, right? And competitions. If you encourage them to participate in some competitions, and on betting sites, there are different kind of competitions that happen. So the people, it becomes more exciting for them to go and not just stick to the site, but also start inviting others. So the hypothesis here is going to be, if we give them incentives, that will be a deliverable. Like if we give them some incentives, then most likely they're going to go and invite friends. Like if you invite your friend, I'll give you $100 free for betting. Just an example. So as a user, I want to see my events. This is for this one. For your story is going to be, as a user, I want to take advantage of those incentives, those promotions, and do more betting or invite more people or invite friends and take advantage of it. So that will turn into a user story or a feature, whatever you call it. So that way, in the personalization, my event, my tournaments, if you personalize, then you becomes your space, and you tend to invest more into the site, and the chances that you will explore more, you will bet more, something like that. The recommendation engine we talked about, that you create an engine, and then finally that turns into the story. So this is about the players, and these are not the only 4 things that we're talking about. You can create as many, and as you go through that, you realize like, okay, looks like the incentives, the invite to friend is the better way of doing it, right? So people can also ask like, how do you know that this is going to work? How do you know that invite friend is better than personalized? So that's where your lot of data points that you go and collect, that becomes one of the action items of this exercise, that you don't decide everything upfront there, like this is the priority. But if you do not have enough data points, then you go and gather those data points to find out like what you think is. Previously, the companies will invest months in marketing. No need for that. Just gather enough data points and start create one hypothesis, and let people start working. By the time you can collect more data points, and then start working on more. And as you go, the development and discovery goes together all the time. It's not that the discovery is done and now it's at the development. Gather enough data points to start discovering at least one of the things. For example, if the team thinks that we create a recommendation engine and that is going to drive more customers, go for it. See the hypothesis, see if that is moving the needle and trying to get more people. Invite friends. If we give them promotions, incentives, some free money, they're going to get more friends and more family members, and that will increase the number of the people. If you think that is the best way, go try it out. But by the time you're trying it out, the next time when we're going to go and meet for this kind of an exercise, we'll again go through this mapping and see like what else is missing, what else we can add, what else could be the impact, what else could be the deliverables, and what could be the resulting features and stories out of that. And the second is agencies. Like you can hire some external agencies to go and do the promotions for you. And what are the things, what are the impact they are going to make, what change in behavior they are going to cause, is they're going to reach the customers. They can reach the customers by banner ads, by multiple other means, some other ad, or maybe social media, some. So I have just tried to create a very simple, each of these impact can have sub impacts, so that way it becomes like a tree, and you can go and start creating that tree, and that will lead to different deliverables, right? Engage network. So if you want to engage your network, the network of that company, then you have to create a tool so that you can engage network, and that creation tool become that deliverable, because that will enable this creation of this impact, this change in behavior here, which will lead to more customers, right? And then there will be subsequent user stories. The priorities, like I said, you decide priorities based on the data, like which you think was going to go and create more impact. So mostly it's the business, PO, they go and gather some data. If they have data, fine. If not, they go and gather data and say like, well, reaching customer looks like going to impact more based on these data points. And engineers, developers, and everybody must ask for those data points. They should not just leave because the business decide, this is more important. So let's go and start reaching customer first by engaging agencies and doing ads. Why do you think that? So once you start asking those deep, incisive questions, the business will be kind of incentivized to go and gather some more data, and it becomes more data driven. And once you do that, then you can convert the stories into it. So the developers, most of the time, are straight away given the stories without understanding this context. All on the left-hand side, that we did in the goal and actor impact and deliverables, they basically are not engaged here, and the straight are engaged here. Like, these are your stories, these are your features, go start working on it. And this poor guy will start thinking like, why this? Why we are going to go and work on this? What is the incentive? How this is going to get the maximum bang for the buck? How do we know that what the story is doing is actually going to go and impact this 10,000? Absolutely no idea. They just keep doing, and they will ask 10,000 questions without understanding the intent. And ultimately they will deliver something, and they were expecting this. They think it's just like a bunch of software they have to create. They won't understand the intent. If these people understand, the developers understand the intent, they may come up with better deliverables, better solutions, multiple solutions, better impact, much what I call the richer impact. Means not just these 3, 4, they can also say like, why not try this as well? Because this is going to be faster. I can do something better with this amount of time and money that we have. So this is a kind of a high level exercise that we do in all this impact mapping. We work together and try to come up with some kind of a map, and think like, if this stays, this sticks, iteration after iteration, this also becomes your roadmap. You can see that first you're going to go and work on invite friends, then personalize, or you can arrange whichever way you want. So this will also talk about, in order to reach this 10,000 customers, these are the things that you're going to work on, either one by one or together, depending on your capacity, depending on your velocity, or depending on, how many people you have, how many departments, how much fund you have, in all those different factors. But you start working in a month or in iteration. When you meet again, you again go over this and see whether it's going to make an impact, or you need to make some changes. If you need to make some changes, create more impacts and the resulting deliverables and the stories, or maybe more players, it all depends on it. So it's a living and breathing exercise that you do all the time, so that you're always closer to the goal, you always reach the goal, and you always meet that the goal. So that's it for me. Questions?
Yeah, great. Actually, so actually we have Slido. So we there are certain questions which have come up. So I'll just ask them one by one. So one is with the skill sets of the team not clearly available during the initial discovery, the technical team is not onboarded yet. How to include the technical team?
So if they're not onboarded, it means they have not even been hired. They don't even exist. That's what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I feel it means, but in case somebody wants to clarify that, that would be great.
Yeah. So hi Ashok, hi Shrikant, Saikat here. So my question was, before we started, so there is a project that we are currently initiating, and at this moment we do not have a heading of what kind of solutioning or what kind of technology or tool sets would be used. Hence, we do not know with what developers to onboard yet. So you mentioned that it's a good practice to have technical people participate in discovery as early as possible. How do we go about it if we do not have a heading of the?
Okay. I mean, that's a good question. So you just started a company and you want to keep moving, and you know that hiring developers is going to take at least 2-3 months. Then we again do the impact mapping and see like what we can do without developing anything, right? Or In that case, we either will have to outsource it if we have to develop it because we don't have the developers in house, right? So the same exercise, the whole idea is about that. We will mind map this. We'll try to find out what are the possible impacts that we have to create. And if we don't have developers, then what we can do, for example, in this case, if we have to create promo, can we create promo without developers and still make an impact? Our marketing department, can they do some events without creating that software because we don't have that ability? You know, the same thing, the same exercise. Here, we will also look in the constraints. Like we cannot work on all 4 of them together, or we cannot work in a bunch of them together because of some restrictions. So what else we can do? So that's why it becomes also a prioritization exercise. Like given the current constraints, this is the best thing that we can do. So by the time we are hiring developers, let's go and start meeting this target by just reaching our network, engaging our network. How? We do not have to. So what are the things we can do? We can start sending them emails. That's not the most effective and efficient way, but let's do that, you know. So those kind of things we start thinking about and coming out with possible alternatives so that we always making an impact. We don't wait. The good thing with this is we come out with some impact, something that is going to go and move the needle here versus waiting on developers will come and then we're going to go and start working on this. We don't work that way. We always look for within our means, with all the resources that we have today, how we can create that impact, change in behavior so that we get nearer to this goal. Make sense?
Yes, yes. This is actually a very good insight into it. Thank you, Ashok.
Yeah. So another one is if the hypothesis fails on implementation, what should be the next step for the team? Do we create a new outcome?
Yeah, and it happens. So in my previous company, what happened when the hypothesis were, nobody knew that. So you have to make it transparent. And that's the one thing. When we did this exercise, the second part of that is these are the outcomes. This is the change in behavior that we want to see so that this needle, this goal, we move the needle to achieve this goal. So we go and openly encourage. That's why I said in the beginning, there's some rules that we have to follow, that we have to be courageous. We have to be courageous to go and share that failure with the whole team. When we are going to share in our sprint reviews or in the next discovery exercise or whenever, whatever the best opportunity is, and say, this did not work. For example, in that case, the people wanted to invest 8 months in creating that routing the high MPV calls to the best of the agents is going to go and increase revenue. We came to know within 3 sprints, like 1.5 months, that is not working. The data that we are getting is there's hardly any difference. So that led us to move very quickly to the next portion, the next impact that we need to go and work on. And then we again gathered some data points like which should be the next impact, and then we start working on it. Because like I said, this is a world of agility. It's a very complex world in the sense like we do not know if we work on a particular initiative, it will definitely have an impact on this goal. The way we work is we assume that this is going to go and impact and nobody is engaged here and straight go and do the stories. Instead, through this exercise, we bring business and technology together and everybody together, and we set a very clear goal, and then they ask and go and work on the goal and share the data, whether it failed, you succeed, you did not succeed, and then collectively move towards the second one. You know, that's how we work.
Yep. So actually just wanted to add one point as well here, that most of the times, even though we may be doing something like, for example, out of that impact, we may be creating stories, but as you rightly pointed out, that we will not be measuring it actually. So,
yeah.
So everybody doing something, everybody thinks that they're doing something, but then they don't really go back to see whether whatever they were supposed to do and whether it's really working or not. So they may be spending millions of dollars and then never going back whether that whole thing is really working or not. So that is one thing, irrespective of whether somebody is using impact mapping or not using or whatever. I think the point is it is important to really measure the feedback. I mean,
Yes.
how it, whatever you are doing does it really making any changes or not? In case it is not making any changes, why the hell you're doing it actually in the first
Exactly.
place?
Exactly. So I should actually add another column here, which says not a stories, the outcome of the stories, because that outcome will determine whether we are going to go and stick to the same impact or the next impact. And this collection of data, you must have noticed, I talked a lot about data and data points. And it's the right of everybody working in the team to ask for those data points. So I remember, and I was in Capital One, and they were doing a big revamping of the promotion system. So one thing I ask business is like, if you really want to see the impact, then what you have to do is to share the data. Like whatever we delivered, did it bring any value? Did it earn any money? Did it make any difference? And you have to share that with, they say like, that will happen in the end. I say like, then it's wrong. Then you break down your stories in such a way that you can share in not every iteration, every month. Like, yes. So then they started breaking down their features in such a way that they become impactful. And they could create a hypothesis. And that hypothesis, that impact, when they actually worked, I remember in the first month we worked on stopping the gaming of the system, means people were gaming those promos, and they were basically fleecing the company with lots of money. So when they stopped that gaming the system, then we made basically $1 million a month. And when we shared this with the development team, like, hey, whatever effort you did in the first month saved company $1 million a month, means more than $12 million per annum. They were so excited. They said like, yes, we want to do more work. So when you see the result of your work, it becomes super exciting, highly motivating. So that's also the idea behind this. You break it down in such a way that you only focus on the impact and the data related to the impact and see whether it's working or not working, and you're actually moving the needle. So
Yep, makes sense.
good point.
So the next one is around how often do we need to revisit impact mapping exercise? Do we do it every iteration?
Yes, I would say every iteration. And you know why? And the reason I was kind of hesitant in saying every iteration, because sometimes your features are too big and you cannot see the impact in every iteration. And then it's okay to have every month, but at least visit every month. If you visit every 2 months, then there's a possibility you will miss the impact and you're working too long on the impact, which is not working. So at least a month, we should meet. And iteration is the best, I think. Even if they say like no changes because we haven't got the data, fine, so be it. But the idea is that we are meeting every 2 weeks to go and assess the situation, that how our impacts are doing, how is it moving the needle or not. That's the key thing. If your impact is, and one of the 2 key things point that you have to make sure, number one, this impact map should not grow so big that we get lost into that. So it should remain containable so that we know what are the things that we are going to work on and what are the things our priorities are, and we can easily map that to the results and the goal so that the results are actually impacting the goal. If it becomes too big, for example, say the invite friends, if we're going to say like, hey, invite friends is going to go and take 8 months to develop, then again is an anti-pattern. That's not agility. That's not the whole idea. The idea is take that invite friends, break it down into deliverables and into stories so that those features or stories are actually going to go and make an impact in next iteration or 2. Some impact. And then when you start seeing those signals, if it's not fully ready, for example, in my example, which I gave, whether routing those calls to the agent, we only did that with like how many? 200 agents. So 200 agents, which was like a top 10% agents, and there another 200, which was not so, not A category in the B category. And we try to measure, we try to see if actually it's going to make any significant difference in the revenue. it is just like 10 or 19, 20 or 19, then it's okay. No, it's not making a whole difference. And we try that for 2 or 3 iterations, whether it's actually going to go and make a difference. And then we realize based on the data, no, it's not making a difference. So it did not completely go away. Still, we're trying to do something closer to that. But the thing is, we knew for sure that this is something that is not going to go and make a difference in our revenue, because our revenue is not moving anywhere. Just because we are, redirecting those high NPV calls to the best of the agents. So that way, if you don't keep moving if you don't keep meeting every iteration, then we won't have the data. And even if we have data, we are not sharing it. But there are circumstances where you may not have data in every iteration. There's some lag time, or for that matter, you have to at least work a month or a month and a half to create that impact, to create that software or do something. The things are that big, it's possible. But the idea is we have to keep it so small that we can see the impact as early as possible. That's the whole goal behind this exercise.
Yep, makes sense, actually. So the next one is around the OKRs. So how is impact mapping different from the OKR? Is there a relation, compatibility?
Absolutely, directly related to the OKRs. In OKRs, you have the high-level OKRs. Underneath, you have level 1, level 2, level 3. You can even go up to lower levels. So level 2 and level 3, especially level 3, are directly tied to this goal. And when you're working, you can say, like, whether that level 3 OKR or even level 2 OKRs are impacted or not by that effort by the team. Because it's very much possible for that one OKR, the level 1 OKR, the entire company is working on that. But level 2 and level 3, when it start coming down, then you can find out whether that needle is being, for example, our level 1 OKR is going to be in this year, we're going to increase the revenue of the company by 20%. And level 2 is going to be these departments on these particular initiatives, or whatever you call it. These particular section of the company is going to go and work to increase at least by 5%. And that is your level 2. And underneath the software, all the development teams are going to go and make an impact and trying to do something with the software, make some impacts that will increase the revenue by 4%, whatever that is. I'm just making it up. So when you go towards level 2 and level 3 OKRs, that basically translates to your goal. Then you can create a hypothesis or a goal based on that level 2 or level 3 OKRs. And that will again be mapped to all these things. So you understand how the OKR is related to this? Your level 2, level 3 will straight give you a goal or a purpose and a hypothesis. And that you can create that hypothesis. Like, in order to achieve that, in order to move that OKR needle, we have to do all these things. So in that company which I was talking about, we had that OKR model. And we took that level 3 OKR, and that said, like, we have to increase the revenue by 5%. And then we started finding out different ways, different impacts. And one of the impacts was routing the calls to the right agents. And that's how we go and try to map it and achieve the results, get some data and share that it's not working, and let's try something else. Yep.
So actually one question has been asked by Jasdev Singh as well around the sites tools, intuitive enough, will guide you along the way in creating an impact map.
Which tools? Sorry.
Any sites and tools that are intuitive enough and will guide.
Okay. You're talking about something for impact mapping. There are
for
tools
creation
available.
purposes.
Yeah, there are lots of tools available, but the tools are there, and I don't remember off the top of my head. But if you go look into it.
So actually, there are a lot of mind mapping tools which are available. So one tool which I generally use, I love that one actually. That is mindmap.com. Is I'll just write it over here as well. So that is free. That is integrated with Google Docs, Google Drive as well. So you can use them. Then FreeMind is one which is available as a desktop application to create the mind maps. So these are the mind mapping tools. But then from the impact mapping standpoint, there is a website created by Goiko as Adzik as well. So I'll just write his name.
Yeah.
So he has created a, and then I think, yeah, Mural also create, with that you can create the mind mapping as
Yes,
well.
you can use, we use murals a lot of time for
So
creating that kind of thing. But the key idea here is not using the tool. The tool is just going to help you, especially in an online setup.
yeah,
You can also do it in the whiteboard. But the key thing here is getting the people together and have that discipline.
absolutely.
Do it regularly, not one time.
Yeah, because I mean, most of the times it happens that the focus happens to be on the tools, but then
Yes.
the most important part is this whole collaboration actually. I mean,
Yes.
and that can happen without any tool. I mean, we as you gather as this group actually, you will find tons of tools anyways. But the point
Yeah.
is that that should be done together as to create the shared understanding.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll take a couple of more questions. So this is about, so last two questions. One is, where are epics depicted in impact map in stories?
So the epic is going to be at this level, which one epic will have a tangible goals as acceptance criteria. Like as a company or as a department, as an organization, we want to increase the revenue. I'm just making it up. So when the epic is that level, the epic should have very clear goals, like what epic is trying to achieve. Either it could be we're trying to create a system so that we become, we can reduce that churn rate by certain percentage. So all those things, the epic is directly tied to your OKR, the key objectives that you have. And that becomes your goal. And that you have to break it down into deliverables. If epic is not tangible, if the epic says just go and create a system, it's not a good epic. Then you have to have that good epic hypothesis. Like what is that result? How you're going to go and move that OKR needle? How you're going to go and move that, how you're going to go and achieve that goal, the tangible goal for the company. The epic should be directly tied to that. There should be no kind of inference. Like, yes, if we do this, then possibly the epic is going to go and, so that's why the epic is a very high level. So they're directly tied to the goals or the OKRs.
And generally, actually, that is, I mean, my understanding about it is like, generally these are the just, I mean, if you think about stories and epics and features or whatever, these are just the concepts actually to break down the mountains into the large rocks, then to the smaller rocks, up to the table level actually. So you can name anything actually, so it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. So right now we have named as them stories. You can name them epics as well. Or I mean, it will not make a huge difference actually. So I mean, these are just on the implementation level, and on the implementation level, you can further break them down into the smaller story.
Correct.
So
correct. That's also a way to think about it. Like you can treat this as an epic. But what I was suggesting here is, when we talk about the epic, the first thing that comes to my mind is something huge. And the reason it's something huge is because it's nebulous. We do not know what it is, because it's directly tied to that business goal. The business say like, hey, get 1 million customer. So the epic says like, hey, as a company, we want to go and get 1 million customer. It doesn't mean anything unless break it down into the smaller, the real tangible things. So this exercise is basically breaking that nebulous thing into very clear, specific impacts that we can work on. And then we can finally go and say like, well, whether it's impacting our goal, our KPI, our OKRs or not. And that's the whole idea. Or you can also think alternative, like Shrikant said, we can think these as epics. And under epics, there's going to be a lot more stories. But that's another way. So if you think this is an epic, you think this is more like an OKR, or whichever you like. These are just the words that you can shift here or there. This is a higher level thing here, and this is a lower level thing. So you have to break it down. So this exercise of breaking down in such a way that you convert those high-level goals, OKRs, into a low-level stories.
Sure. So we will take the last question, which is about how this will help delivering or defining the MVP.
Correct.
Yeah, of the product.
So the MVP is minimum viable product, which is a highly misused term. What I say, the best way to think about MVP is minimal testable product. Means what is that hypothesis that we can test and say whether it is making an impact on the customer, making impact on the revenue, making an impact on any of the goals. So each one of these, a small section of that we can test. For example, invite a friend and we give an incentive. We'll start with one incentive or maybe a couple of incentives and see whether it's going to go and make a difference. That is your MVP. That is your thinnest. So here I have tried to make it very simple, but in many cases, it's not going to be that simple because you have to go through many hoops before you're actually going to go and make an impact. So when you have to go through that thinnest possible vertical slice to make an impact, that becomes your MVP. So think of MVP as minimum. What is that minimal testable hypothesis that you can create so that you can reach the customer and you can test that and see whether it's making an impact or not? That thinnest possible slice, that's your MVP. So in this case, every line could be an MVP here, or when the things are more complicated, there are going to be several series of activities that'll create an MVP. That's
and sometimes like it may happen that, like, say, for example, your hypothesis is that incentive will or inviting friend will help doing that actually. But then with your MVP, very small change you made in the production, you find out that doesn't make any sense actually to the product.
Exactly.
Then you don't need to think about it in that way further actually.
Yeah. So all you have to do is to work with the business and everybody and try to prove them like whatever ideas that we came up with is working or not working.
Yep.
And that's the whole idea behind this MTP or MVP, minimum testable. And if you do not do that, if you do not test and learn, then you will end up overproducing it. You'll create something only to realize that it doesn't work. So that's the idea that we want to move away from, right? We want to fail early. So this is called failing early. Like if you invite friends and we think like this is the right place to invest based on the data points, we try to work on that, or we try to give a lot of incentives, it doesn't work. People are not going to be incentivized to go and join this betting website. If that's hypothesis proven, then you already failed in that and you failed fast. That's the whole idea behind it, to create that MTP, that you can experiment faster and prove or disprove the hypothesis. Yeah.
Yep. So Sunil, you have raised your hand. You want to say something?
Yes, Shrikant, thank you so much. Yep. So Ashok, just wanted to know, so I know this is a very, I would say insightful and eye-opener sessions. Thank you so much for that. So I have one question. So how this exercise is, different from we used to do in PI planning under the SAFE?
What is that exercise you do under the PI planning in the SAFE?
The program increment I'm just talking about. So we are just slicing down the epics into the stories.
Correct.
So is this the similar
one? So actually, I mean, my understanding about the PI planning is that it is all about making sure that whatever dependencies there may be having across multiple teams, you identify them, you have a conversation about them, and that's what the kind of discussions generally happens during the PI planning. But this kind of discussion which is about the outcomes, and then identify who is and how that will happen. What is the goal? What is the actors? What is the impact? So that impact mapping exercise doesn't really happen, and that is what I have seen actually in most of the PI plannings.
So let me give an example here. Say we are working on that, the impact that we want to create here. I'm taking this example, the second one, agencies, and we have to reach the customers and engage the network. Okay, we have 10 teams in an art, and they're doing the PI planning. And we know that this is it's a huge things, because we have to create a promo, we have to automate the promo creation process, we have to create tools for inviting, we have to create multiple tools, we have to use AI for those tools and all. All those will ultimately lead to these features here. So these are going to be the features. And these features, so this exercise will happen before the PI planning. I would say not in the last moment, but a little before, at least 2-3 weeks before, 4 weeks before, whatever the right thing is, at least 2 iterations before. There are 6 iterations in a PI, then at least 2 iterations before. And in that, we'll come up with these features and maybe high-level solutions. And these features, if you do collaboratively, the team will know that in the next PI, they have to go and tackle these features. And that's how they're going to go and organize themselves. They find out like whatever work they're doing, is there independency and between each other, or they can go and tackle it independently. And that's how, when you do the PI planning, basically these become an input to your PI planning. All the features that you create here. Make sense?
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you so much. Yes, agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also one more thing. Yeah. The way I've seen a lot of companies do the PI planning, they just go and break it down into technical stories, and those technical features are here, and then they go and just work the heck out of it to go and find out like what are the dependencies, mapping the dependencies before and after. They go use all Jira ready and everything they're heavily dependent on. Instead, if they do this mapping, they can already take care of a lot of those dependencies all the way directly to the goal. So this will help them save those dependencies. There will be least amount of dependencies because they have already gone through. So you can create virtually an independent features here. And when you go to the PI planning, one team or maybe a couple of teams can go and take care of this entire thing without creating that dependency chain and deliver it in the fastest possible manner. That's another beauty of doing this. It helps a lot in clarifying and removing those dependencies and have a clear objective. The objective is to reach customer, and these are the features. I just created one. There could be 10 features here, and each team is going to go and take 5 + 5. 2 teams are going to take, and they will work in such a way in tandem so that they can go and meet this goal of reaching customer and show the results in the system demo and see whether this agency's got what they're looking for at the end of the PI. That's how you're going to look at it.
So the last one actually from Vinayak. Vinayak, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Hi, Ashok. It's like there's, I think this is one of the most practical questions. It's like basically, as you mentioned, like stories and all, okay, it's like we know in most of the companies, it's like the team is confined only to the story level. It's like they don't have access to other paths because the entire company is framed in such a way. So basically, how do you handle in such cases? It's like, okay, we know everything. This has to be done. It's like that's there, but the management, the frame of the company is set in that way. How would
how would you approach it?
Yeah.
And this is not you're the only person. I have faced in every company, in all the companies, and it happens. And that's where you have to go and start influencing them, influencing in a right way, so that like it took me in the current company where I'm working almost a year to bring them to this path. Now they're doing it. Now they're realizing the importance and all. So the way it works is you have to create some data points. You have to collect some data points. And as you're going through those traditional route where the most of the features are technical features, and you go and collect data and show that how those technical features create unnecessary dependencies, unnecessary work, how that is going to take longer, how that half of the PI you're spending understanding the right features or requirements. So how these all things is basically delaying, slowing it down, and how by doing this exercise, you're going to reduce, minimize dependencies, how you will go and create more impact, how it will be more data-driven, because you can also show the impact, how your system demo will become more meaningful. If you can go and demonstrate all that, the chances that your leadership, your management will get convinced is higher, versus just going and say like, hey, I have learned a cool exercise, let's do it. Then I'm going to buy that. So you have to always approach with some data. Like whatever we're doing, there are these inefficiencies, this is not effect. This is the data to prove that. If we do this, again, this is the hypothesis. If we do this, the chances are we'll minimize dependencies. Why? Because we have already thought through this. It will increase the development time. Why? Because the developer are already engaged and they understood it. It will create data-driven atmosphere. Why? Because we are going to go and prove that with data, that whether the hypothesis was working or not working, means invite friend is working or not working. Once you approach like that, the chances that you will be able to convince your management and leadership is much higher. That's how I approach at least. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Ashok, for joining again. So it was a wonderful session, and there was a lot of good, wonderful questions as well. Thank you everyone for joining this one.
Ashok, I have a last question. If Ashok is okay and you're okay with his timings.
Yeah.
Hey, hi Ashok. So just want to ask you a practical scenario which I'm facing. In a typical service organization where the backlog is predominantly controlled by the customer, how do we go and convince them to have this? Because I'm facing this, where customer says that, okay, go ahead and do, this is your epic, this is your story, and this is your acceptance criteria. And they come back in the demo and they say, no, this is not meeting, this is not meeting, this is not meeting your acceptance criteria.
I know that. That's
so
very typical.
Handles the scenario.
So the reason that happens is they have certain expectations. That's why in the beginning I talk about the intent.
Yes.
You do not, when you are working on the story, you have no idea why this was done, how this is done, or anybody even did it.
Exactly. Even developers don't know what they are doing. They're just coding. That's it.
Exactly. They have no context, zero context. If you have a zero context, basically you're setting up for big failures because there's a lot of going to be overproduction. The work that's not needed, you will create it. You will just double guess it. You'll second guess it. And you start creating something. You will ask tons of questions, which is just basically a clarifying questions, which does not mean anything. If they do all the exercise up front. So basically the trick is you have to bring a customer closer, at least in one session before you start working. Like, hey, can you explain me, give me the entire context. And when they agree to give the context, go through this exercise, some kind of an organized exercise so that they understand, oh, so once they understand, the reason it does not happen is because a lot of people don't volunteer to go and take the whole team and do this kind of an exercise. That is one thing which is missing. Nobody even...
but Ashok, the customer is a typical business customer. He doesn't kind of, I don't know how to put that word. He doesn't like the business insights to get into the development team. It's like more like, okay, these are your user stories. This is what you have to do. You come back to me, I'll give you a feedback.
Yeah, so that is a very typical customer behavior. And that's why one of the things I mentioned earlier is you also have to unlearn it. That's what they have learned all through. That's how they were. Yes. So once they do this exercise, or at least to reach them with the data points, like, hey, the way you're working, this is not very effective because, like I said, the way I reached is 50% or 100% of the features changed either moderately to significantly.
I second that.
50%. Yes, I collected all those data. 50%.
I second that actually. In my current project, I second that actually.
Yeah. So you have to read, and then 50% of the time we spent in clarifying and actually really understanding the feature. Like what was the intent, why we needed, because we didn't have context. So when you reach for the data, then gradually they're like, yeah, this guy makes sense. So what do you suggest? So let's come to a room. Let's do this exercise. Yeah, it makes sense. So you have to bring the customer to the room on the common sum table, and somebody has to show the courage to go and take
some data points. Using some data points.
Data points and some courage. To go and lead
this is important.
That's true. That's true. Thanks, Ashok. Thanks, Ashok.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I think we will put this to an end right now. So thank you so much, and we will conduct another session soon.
Yeah. So we also have that.
Thanks, Ashok. Thanks, Shrikant.
Yeah. So we also have that training session. When is that, Shrikant, the training session?
Yeah, so training session is happening actually on 2nd and 3rd October. So Ashok is going to conduct that. It is on Saturday and Sunday. So that is focused towards basically, I mean, a lot of different real world scenarios which we have been talking here actually. So this is not again a hello world kind of session, but more about the kind of challenges we generally face in our workplace. So that session is going to happen on 2nd and 3rd October. People who want to join can join there.
It's on the impact mapping, Shrikant?
So that is an agile session. So a master class on agile. So
Okay.
there will be a lot of different topics will be covered on that. So details have been mentioned in the URL.
So basically that is more like we talked about just one aspect of the whole, in the big chain of the things.
Yes.
How should we actually do the Scrum? How should we actually think about it? What is the right mindset? All the practical examples, the real thing that how you should actually do in a real life, not like a theoretical things, just go sprint planning and DSUs or stand-ups and all this. No, what it means, how do you do in the real life, how it is going to go and actually make a difference, a change. What is the idea behind it? So this is like entirely based on my experience, which I gathered and experimented over and over again. So that's the 2-day session where we are not going to just talk about those the bookish thing. We'll talk about the real life experience, that, for example, how we actually do it, how it makes a difference, what it means, what Scrum actually means, what a goal actually means, how you set up goals. We do some exercises also there, and that will make it clear, like why it was set up that way, why we do what we do right, what we don't do right. So that's the reason I thought, like, let's set up some sessions and doing the things right? Not just doing the right things, doing the things right. And that's your 2-day sessions that I've set up. We have set up actually. Shrikant.
Thanks, Shrikant.
Thanks a lot.
It was a very insightful session. Anyways, as usual from Ashok.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashok. Thanks, Shrikant.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ashok.
Bye. Bye, Manish.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, sir. Bye.